Hi and welcome to a new dev vlog. In this video I'm going to take a look at the dragging and dropping in my page builder, and right now I can enter text over here, and that's the edit mode, and I want to add some functionality to the selection mode. Now I already can select objects, and I can select multiple objects if I want to, but I want to be able to drag and drop stuff, so I can change the order of things, and eventually I want to have a 2 column and 3 column, and now it doesn't work, but 2 column and 3 column option in which I can drag and drop stuff to the first or the second column in the column structure thingies over here. So one of the first things I need to do is make sure that all the mouse cursors, etc., are good. Every action that I do, for example, clicking here, that is done by an event. So if I click, the on-click event is fired of the mouse, and if I change something here, for example, the on-change event is fired, and when I click here, for example, on save, then the on-save event, the on-click event is fired, but the on-save function is called. So to start, I already defined a couple of things. I added an event listener for the drag start, and I added an event listener for the drag end. So when it starts, I add the class dragging, and that class dragging makes it transparent. And with the event listener drag end, the transparency ends. And with the event listener drag over, I show here with the prevent default to the user that you can drag objects on other objects. And so the first step in dragging and dropping kind of already works, but the dropping doesn't work yet. And dragging and dropping is a really big deal for this system and the content management system in its entirety, because when you can drag and drop, you can actually use the page editor or page builder as a page builder, and puts the content management in content management system. Okay, yeah. We're a couple of hours in. The dragging and dropping still doesn't function that well. I have to take a look at that, but I wanted to make sure that I have a situation where I can drag and drop something inside the elements here, because this is a 3-part column, and so I need to create a structure here in element to make a 3-part column. So I need to add those edit boxes, and so I had to figure out the system to make those edit boxes show up next to each other. Now I've made a flexible system. I can call this from every single object over here to display this, and if I have some components that you don't want to edit this, I can in a very flexible way say I want to do that, or I want to add that, or not. What I added here is you can move now a component up and down. So if if the dragging and dropping turns out to be a stinky solution, if that doesn't work properly, we have at least a move tool. Okay, now the columns and rows are there, because now I can select this item over here, and now you will see that I can add columns over here. I can remove columns if I want to, and I can add rows, and I can remove rows. I can also add a gap now, which means that there is a gap between those elements over here. I also continued with dragging and dropping. The problem a little bit with dragging and dropping is you have to figure out where you need to drag and drop. So you need to have your coordinates of your mouse, and then the coordinates of the element. And how do you decide where to drag and drop, or where to drop an element? And that is a quite interesting algorithm. What I figured out to do is determine the middle, so the center point of an object, and then decide, okay, if it's below the center point, then I need to add it on top, and if it's above the center point, I need to add it on the bottom. And coordinates on a computer screen are always counted from the top and from the left, because if a screen is bigger, then that resolution gets added to the right and to the bottom. Okay, we're a couple of hours ahead, and right now the dragging and dropping still doesn't work, but I'm a step further, because I can now, when I go to the edit mode, I can grab this element, and when you look at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see that now it says on which element it is over, and if it needs to be added before or after, because now you see it's design object in designer number 64, and it needs to be added before, and now it needs to be added after, and the same thing for the next 56. 56 before and after, and also here before and after. Don't mind the green thingies, because that tells me if it is a drop target, yes or no. So now it knows where to drag and drop, and if it needs to drop it before or after the element. So the next step is to indicate where the drop is going to happen to the user. Okay, well, I did it. Now I can drag and drop from the Create tab to the Designer, and here it is. And I have a drop cursor, so you see where you're dropping. And I thought about doing a preview, but so you see what is happening. But the downside of that is when I do a preview and I select multiple objects and then I drag and drop them, you can get really big changes in your web page, and that might be a little bit annoying, especially when you want to go up and down, and then your scroll bar might be going all over the place. So and might scroll down, etc. That is totally not what you want. But nevertheless, yeah, there's still some bugs here, because when I drag over here, it still tries to define where it should insert it, but it always adds it. But that's a little thing. Dragging and dropping in the designer itself doesn't work. It also gives an error here. That still doesn't work. So that is my next job. Dragging and dropping works. When you go to the inventory, of course, that worked already. Now you can drag and drop it everywhere you want, and I can select an item and drag and drop it where I want. And you can see it also drags and drops in the structure, and I can drag and drop from the structure into the designer. There's still a bug, an issue going on, and it has to do with items that are dragged into other items, and then it generates two events, and that's because I'm in an item and I'm also over an item. But that is something for the future to look at. This was a very interesting experience and a fun one, but nevertheless, a lot of work ahead. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.